Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's session. We are so happy to have you all back here after an intense working day on the challenges. I am also happy to welcome our live online audience because we are live streaming this session as well today. So, you should have lots of exciting questions, I'm sure, for our wonderful panelists. We have a session now, which is a senior-junior leaders dialogue, focused on policy and decision-making for the future of society and technology. And this is something we really try and do with all of our youth projects, is really try to bring young people together with senior leaders, decision-makers, policy-makers. So we're really excited to have this session, and to also have this session with the support of the European Parliament and ASEAN team as well, who we have a representative from today as well. So, our first part of this session, we have a video message from MEP Dr. Victor NEGRESCU, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but wanted to share his words with you. So we will hear from him now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation and this possibility to address you today through this video message. My name is Victor NEGRESCU. I'm the Vice Chair of the committee in charge of culture, education, youth, media and sport in the European Parliament, but also I'm responsible on budgetary matters because we need, of course, EU funds for those important objectives. I'm really happy to see so many of you coming together, discussing about global challenges, about the digital transition and the green transformation, two important topics at global level. And in order to deal with those challenges together, and especially young people that are usually capable of coming up with innovative ideas that will enable us to tackle those important challenges. We need to make sure that people have access to the opportunities offered by those two key transformations, not only in terms of number, but also in terms of quality. We need to make sure that we are investing more together in education, but also investing more in sustainable ways of achieving those transformations. We really need to reflect at the full picture, meaning at global level, but also going into details when it comes to those two different transformations. When it comes to digital challenges, for instance, we have to speak about the digital gap, but also how to make accessible quality education related to artificial intelligence, robotics, IT. And for that, we need to reflect upon that topic. For instance, how to make sure that we have enough teachers for those classes. How to make sure that everyone has access to the technologies related to those different fields. Also, when you refer to the green transformation, we have to make sure that everyone has access to the essential raw material that is being used to produce green technologies. And also, we have to make sure everyone receives a fair pay for the work that they are doing. And of course, also in the supply chain, everyone is being paid fairly. Of course, we cannot find easy solutions to those challenges, but I'm confident that this type of events will enable us to identify bright ideas that we can push forward at European and why not at global level. I think this community represents an excellent example of how we can work together, and I'm confident, I'm really waiting for your ideas in order to push them here in this house, in the European Parliament. So good luck to you, and do not hesitate to come up with the most innovative ideas, because we need that in order to move things ahead and really make a change and show that we can do it, we can achieve those challenges in a short time, and also in the same time we can do that for everyone, all European citizens, all Asian citizens, and of course for the entire world. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I wish you the best of luck for your debates.
Thank you. Okay, what very inspiring words. I think it's really great to hear that a policymaker has such faith in you all. I think this is really nice to hear, very encouraging also. So our next part of the session, we will have Mr. Antonio López-ISTÚRIZ White, who is online on Zoom with us today, and also Mr. Antoine RIPOLL, who I will invite to the stage, alongside our lovely ASEF Wireless 5 navigator, Klara SOMMEROVA, to moderate this session. Thank you very much.
Much for introducing us. Europe Fit for the Digital Age, a visible political strategy of the European Union, which was highlighted by Ursula von der Leyen following the 2019 European election in terms of priorities, strategies and policies. The EU's ambitious digital strategy aims to make this transformation work both for people as well as businesses, while helping to achieve its target goal when it comes to climate neutral Europe by 2050. Thank you. Europe is aiming at strengthening its data sovereignty, but also...
I don't hear anything.
Can you hear us, just to check technically? Can we fix it in the technical room, please? Mr. López-ISTÚRIZ White, can I just confirm technically that you can hear us or not? No, okay. I would just kindly ask our technical support if we can please fix the issue. Can we test it? Everything is fine? Mr. ISTÚRIZ López White, can you hear us? Doesn't seem to be the case yet. Can we test it again? Can you hear us? Fantastic, fantastic. Welcome and glad that you can hear us finally. Thank you for the solution. Coming back to what I was saying, Europe is having a very ambitious strategy in terms of policies and legislation. Its aim is to strengthen its data sovereignty, but also set standards rather than to follow those set by others. Clear focus is on data, technology, infrastructure, but also empowering people with a new generation of technologies. It is therefore not a surprise that this has been also a legislative priority. If you would check on the European Union website, you would find around 105 files of both legislative and non-legislative character. These included, within the past 3 days, we've debated it quite a lot, the EU Act on the Artificial Intelligence, but also, for instance, EU Chips Act, through which EU hopes to address the current semiconductor shortages. You will find proposal for regulation on markets related to crypto assets, non-legislative initiative related to virtual worlds such as the metaverse, but also demands of the European Parliament to establish the right to disconnect. In other words, Europe has been busy, and so were our panelists who accepted our invitation to join us today. I would like to give a warm welcome from Salamanca to Mr. Antonio López-ISTÚRIZ White, who's joining us online. He's the member of the European Parliament representing Spain, but also a member of a committee on foreign affairs. If I can get a round of applause for Mr. López-ISTÚRIZ White. Thank you for joining us. And with me here, I would like to introduce Mr. Antoine RIPOLL, Director for Parliamentary Relations with Southeast Asia of the European Parliament. He previously held the same position and spent quite a lot of time in Washington, D.C. So please, round of applause for Mr. Antoine RIPOLL. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining us. We are very pleased that you've decided to discuss with us the future of society and the impact of technologies. Within the group here, we have very aspiring young leaders coming from a wide variety of countries on a very different technological level. We also have people who spend a very busy day focusing on challenges, so you can probably understand the energy level. Based on that, if you agree, I would like to set the debate and set the foundation of a debate with 4 very quick questions, and I would like to get a very quick answers just to set the focus of the debate, and then we can delve a bit more into the topic. So, Mr. López-ISTÚRIZ White, if I can start with you. On a scale between being a techno-optimist and techno-pessimist, where would you place yourself and why? Do you think the technology is bringing more good or bad?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Klara. Bonjour, Antoine. I consider myself as a moderate politician. Maybe you young people call me a traditional politician, that I'm trying to maintain stability in these times where instability is unfortunately the predominant image that politics are giving also to you, to the youth. It is my duty to maintain, a regular society as a traditional politician, excuse me to say, with all these populists in front that many of you are so happy to hear because they offer solutions, quick solutions for everything. And these people have appeared, as they did in the past, profiting the Industrial Revolution. You had the same populists coming and doing the same things. Be careful. History teaches us that ended with 2 world wars. Now we have the new technologies revolution. Klara, you were asking me. I mean, I'm not positive, neither negative. I accept the facts. We are facing a new world, but we have to do it without fear. Fear is the food of these populists. People that they live out of the fears of the society. Fears of, am I going to have a job in the next future? Are they going to respect my identity, my culture? All these supranational institutions like the European Union, United Nations, etc., are they going to respect this? Also with the new technologies? I believe that the new technologies revolution is there to stay, and our duty is precisely to regulate and to adapt this new revolution to our societies, not our societies to this new revolution.
Thank you very much. So technological realist, as I would say, it's a very realistic point of view. If I can come back to my question to Mr. Ripoll, do you consider yourself more a techno-optimist or techno-pessimist?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much to ASEF for having me, and good to see you, Tono, who were in Strasbourg this week. I tried to say hi to you in Strasbourg, but you were busy, like we all are. Anyway, good to see you here. I think that, technologies bring good things and bring bad things, but in the end what counts is that we should be alert, we should be clear-eyed, and what counts probably even more than before with these new technologies is to be lucid about where we are, the state of our society, what we want to achieve. If you are young like you are, I hope still a bit, what do we want to achieve individually and as a society? So technologies are a great thing because it helps us, but it also can be problematic because it does not enable us to concentrate. I was posted recently in Washington D.C. and was talking with the officials of Congress, and they were telling me, and I really believe it's true in any parliament, that with new technologies, members of parliament tend to be probably more quick, want to be the first to tweet on something or to be on Insta on something, and sometimes it's at the detriment of the reflection. And it was an old official, and he was about to retire. So he said, I see a big difference between in the old times, the members who had time to reflect and to take positions after long debates, and now young members often just want to have a photo op. And so, okay, maybe that was a bit too much of a caricature. But I mean, certainly technologies can be problematic if they if they give us the tendency not to think enough. And I think we live in a world that is so complex, with so many interactions, and when I see so many young people here coming from how many countries? Many countries, 30 or 40 countries, with many common objectives and fears or wishes. So I think that we need to concentrate on that, and I think that technologies are good, and I am optimistic about that in the thing that they can help us reach out to each other. The fact that Tono is not here but is here, it means that technologies are helping us to think together. So let's take the best of the technologies, and let's be aware that technologies also can be problematic. So I'm nor the one nor the other.
So also a very realistic point of view. Thank you, gentlemen. My following question for Mr. López-ISTÚRIZ White. If you should choose one topic that you personally perceive as the biggest current or future challenge or risk for EU in terms of technology, what would it be?
I think it was said before by my friend and colleague Victor NEGRESCU, education. I hope that you all have the opportunity that others we didn't, approaching these new technologies. That again, they are not these new technologies that dominate you, that you do it. That is not right now my impression. I think that what we are seeing in politics and in society with the polarization, I see the use of people, the political use, disinformation, fake news, also cyber attacks, vulnerability for us, that tell me that we need much more education in these new fields. This cannot be only for the small elites. Again, history, that's what happened with the Industrial Revolution. The benefices of this revolution were only for a few powerful families in the United States and some in Europe. The rest, millions of people, were living this crisis without any support. We cannot do this again. It cannot be the new technologies revolution about the Elon Musks, the I don't know who, and leaving everybody else, without knowing what's going on. So for me, again, education is the principle.
Thank you very much. We'll actually build on that. So you brought a very, very good point here. Mr. Ripoll, one chose of topic that you personally perceive as the biggest current or future challenge or risk for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I believe, as you know, Europeans, we tend to like to regulate. Maybe we don't like it, but we do it because we believe we want high standards. I think Europeans, and not the only one, but I believe in the world, if you look at Europeans, we want high standards on many things, environment and labor, and digital is the new frontier of standards. And good standards is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. If you are a consumer, you want to have the rights as a consumer. If you consume digital products, and if you consume Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you want to make sure that the company does not take your data without your consent, etc. So I think the big challenge for Europe that is, I think, will be in the next, well, we already are, but we will probably continue to be with all the regulations that are coming up on AI. The challenge for Europe is to be at the level of these high standards, again, to protect people from the interests of big companies sometimes, or from governments. So we need to find the right balance between protecting people and having high standards, and at the same time enabling innovation to continue and technologies to prosper, because we see that society is more open and more accessible if we have these technologies. So we Europeans would like to high standards and regulated standards, and often these standards become the global standards. So let's be responsible when we do regulate, because it's not only for us, it will have an impact on many other countries.
That's actually a great point.
Klara, may I add something? Can I?
You want to add?
Of course, go ahead.
Thank you, Klara. Sorry for the interruption. It's just to support the thesis presented, about regulation by my friend Antoine. No, look to our Asian friends. Europeans, we love our privacy. We are, maybe you can call it individualistic, but we appreciate our rights and our values, which are based on individual freedom. I'm half American, by the way, and I love when I go to the United States and people ask for my email address when I go in the street, asking me for an NGO support or enterprise, information, and everybody gives their email address. I'm a European. I'm not going to give my email address to the first person I meet in the street. I value my privacy. And this is the European Union regulation about these fundamental values and principles of the European Union, take it or leave it. And I think that others will soon join us. After all, in artificial intelligence, the European legislation has been the first one. And even the Americans now are looking, into our activity, into these new laws about intelligence. So we have to be aware that also we have not to control, please. And this is the word that some companies use for their own financial purposes. No, it's to respect all of us individually. That's the main purpose. Thank you.
I absolutely agree. It actually leads me to my next question, because we have an audience here that's coming from a variety of countries with very different access to technology, certain digital divide, and also countries where basically they're on a very different level in terms of what they're actually using in their everyday lives and whether they need to regulate it. It ultimately leads to what you precisely said, with EU basically setting the standards because of the fact that we have access to technology first. A very good example is the General Data Protection Regulation. I do believe that similar thing may happen with the debated EU Artificial Intelligence Act. I would like to hear your view, and here I would firstly look at the perspective of Mr. Ripoll, because he's based in ASEAN countries and can tell us experiences from that. But what is your view on the fact that given our access to technology, we are also the first to regulate, and then these standards are basically taken as a global standards for other countries?
Question.
And what is your perspective on the fact that EU is basically having the first access to technologies, therefore being able to firstly regulate because we need to tackle the issues? And these standards very often become global standards, whether it's GDPR, whether it's EU Artificial Intelligence Act, and so on. How do you perceive it even from perspective of ASEAN?
Yeah, so we have, I'm working now with ASEAN and Southeast Asia, but that is true with all our partners. I mean, many of our partners see Europe as a super regulator, and it's largely true. Again, because that Europeans are aiming at having protection or high standards, and not only for them, but also they believe this is a universal right, because we live in a global world. Products are now global, so. I think we need to reflect in Europe, and I believe actually we are doing that. 2 days ago, the President of the Commission, Mr. van der Leyen, in Strasbourg gave a speech on all the new frontiers of the new European legislation, and it has a lot to do with climate change. It has to do with labor standards, the right of people, the right of have an inclusive society. Digital. I think we need to reflect in Europe. When you talk to Europeans very often, often they, especially in my country, France, where often people tend to not be very happy about everything, as you know well, they like to strike and to demonstrate and things. And often when you ask them, I mean, are you happy with your standards? And they will say, well, no, it's crap, it's really bad, and you know, it could be much better. And it's true, it can always be better. At the same time, I believe if you look at the world and you look at, you know, how do we live in Europe and how do we live in America, how do we live in Southeast Asia, how do we live in other parts of the world? I think if you had metrics and objective criteria, I believe that in Europe you will see that we have a rather high quality of life, also because we have, you know, it's a wealthy area. But I think we need to reflect as Europeans and not only look at ourselves, and of course we believe things could be better, but if we compare to the rest of the world, I think we have high level of standards. And I think we should maybe, I would not say pose like certain would say, but we should be aware of realities in Europe and the rest of the world. We should be also aware of the impact that our standards can have on our own economy, our own competitiveness. And Mrs. von der Leyen 2 days ago said that we do not want not to be competitive, so we want to fight for our competitiveness. And also, talking about Southeast Asia, one of the big things that you see in Europeans is the legislation we are putting together on climate change. And they say often, this is something that you impose on us. Well, actually, all the countries in the world, or most of them, signed the Paris Agreement, so it's not really that the climate agreements are only the fact of Europeans. It's something that is shared because it's a reality, it's an urgency. It just happens that Europeans are maybe a bit more ambitious on the implementation in this agreement, and that means that it needs sacrifices not only for our friends around the world, but also in Europe. We are imposing very big sacrifices to our people and our companies because we want to achieve certain results in due time. And of course, we can't impose these standards and these sacrifices to our people and then import products that would not respect those standards. So I think we should be proud of what we are doing in terms of elevating the level of protection of standards. At the same time, we should be realistic about the impact it can have on our own society and the path of the competitiveness, and the impact it has on our relation with our partners. So it's a delicate balance to find.
It is very much, and the debate actually very often leads to the fact that these type of standards very much influence the competitiveness, so I'm very glad that you brought the topic. Coming back to Mr. LÓPEZ-ISTÚRIZ White, you've also mentioned your experiences in the US, which is in terms of regulation on a very different level. Very often this debate goes to the fact that, for instance, when it comes to artificial intelligence, the standards that EU is setting are actually so high that it limits the competitiveness of startups when it comes to access to data and so on. And very often the arguments lead to the fact that US and China, given the fact that have much more open regulation, are basically able to have access to data sooner and therefore innovate sooner. What is your view on that when it comes to access to data, whether industrial or personal and so on? Personal data currently in the market are very debatable when it comes to, for instance, health data and its use for artificial intelligence. So what is your view? Is EU imposing the standards that high that it limits the use within startups or small and medium enterprises, for instance?
Initially, maybe yes, that would be the impression. I do not deny it. But at the end of the story, we will have higher standards and our enterprises will be much more adapted to when people really start to ask, about their own security and their own privacy. Look, I have a charger. You know that my Asian friends, that in Europe, and my European friends will soon discover, young Europeans, we have adopted a new legislation that, we want to have one single charger for all these, mobiles, computers, and so on. Enough of thousands of millions of kilometers of cable. This is good for the climate change. This is good for our economies, and so on. It was a big battle with the big tech companies who were taking a lot of money out of this. Let's see if in the next future other countries outside of the European Union will benefit from this and everybody will have a single charger. Maybe that will help you. It has been very, very painful to produce this legislation. We have been attacked everywhere. Of course, producers from China, United States, you name it, Korea, you know. But we will see. We will see if at the end everybody has a single charger. And I think that we have done our duty. Also, the question of data. That is very interesting thing. Huh? You know, now we have these stories, even in my family, you know, that we have a conversation about a trip to, I don't know, maybe to France for vacations, and then suddenly in our phone appears next day, out of the blue, we start to receive in some of our, you know, Instagrams and so on, a lot of advertising about vacation, France, no, as a vacation spot. I'm beginning to be a little bit afraid of all this. I think that this has to be regulated. Of course, at the beginning of this, we will be, of course, behind American, Chinese and company. Of course, with China it's a different topic. China is a dictatorship. If I recall, is the Communist Party of China, and the leader, it doesn't seem that he doesn't want to share too much his power, by the way. So, you know, I mean, it has a different approach. It's totalitarian, of course, you know, use of the internet, of this artificial intelligence to control also the society. The Americans, they have a more open approach, of course, you know, it's part of the philosophy and mentality of the United States, and it has driven the United States as the most powerful country in the world for many decades. But Europe, I think, has to maintain its line, you know, I mean, we don't have to be too much, too low, just, as I said, moderate, you know, and legislate to protect our citizens, and, you know, and data. You know, I don't want my data flowing around and be bought by companies. What is this? But excuse me, you know, without my consent? Yeah, well, now we have all these cookies, you know, and all this complicated system that you have to accept or not. You know, it's all very, very interesting. But, you know, my data, you know, I don't want my data to be used, you know, if I don't want to. And also from people that maybe they want to do me harm. So, you know, I mean, food for thought. I guess that in the discussion, I'm sure I will be confronted with many other opinions, and I will be grateful to hear.
Thank you very much for this point of view, and I would also like to open floor for the participants here. If you have any questions or if you have any ideas, comments, please raise your hand. I've already actually seen the hand. We have had some technical challenges with regards to that, so let's please try it. Otherwise, Freya kindly included today's code for Menti, so if there will be challenges, please also use Menti platform and we will read the questions as usual. But please go ahead with the questions from the audience. We will try our best to hear it.
Oh yeah, it's working, great. So actually I have a question on AI cybersecurity, but it needs a bit of context. So like I'm going to give the context first and then the question, all right? So basically, well, I mean, I'm a researcher in AI, so like I've been doing like research on one thing that is the detection of generated texts. So basically it's like systems that tell you if a text is generated by AI or if a human wrote it, right? So basically, the problem is that these systems like just don't work. And like when I say that they just don't work, I mean like, well, there's like a team of researchers, I think from Minnesota or, well, I don't remember the place exactly, but like the important thing is that they showed like, well, they did it like in a mathematical demonstration, but like they showed one idea that I think can be like pretty obvious actually, which is if we train AI systems more and more, they will get better, of course. So when they get better, they will write better and it will be harder to distinguish them from humans. So what they ended up showing is like in the future, even if you dedicate, I don't know, like 100 years of research to try to create a system that detects like generated texts, even if you did that, it will be impossible, because the systems that generate text will be so good that it's just literally impossible to tell apart what's generated and what is not generated. So like this is, well, I think it's a big problem, because it leads to a world where you can like just see a text and you have no way at all of actually knowing if it's real or not. And well, this is like, it gets you like to a complicated point, because like we're going to have the possibility to generate like massive amounts of texts using AI, and it will actually be impossible to know if that's real. And the question, then there comes the question, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to do something? Should we do something? What should we do?
Can I also ask you a follow-up? Is this the general question, or you would like to address it specifically to one of the panelists?
Well, I'd like to get both
Okay.
views, yeah, honestly.
So,
Yes.
gentlemen, which one of you would like to start? I know Mr. Istúriz López-White is very much focused on the security topic as well. Would you like to help us understand your view on this, on the question? Hope you could hear it right.
No, the thing is, first, I don't know the name, I didn't hear it well. Second, you know, the question is about, you know, I mean, what can we do about what?
The question was related to the fact, what can we do about the fact that we cannot no longer distinguish between content produced by artificial intelligence and a content produced by human, which, as we train the systems more and more using artificial intelligence, it will be quite hard to see the divide in between, and whether this can be solved somehow. What is your perspective on that?
Okay, perfect. Let me put it clear. If you produce a paper insulting me, who is the one that I have to you know, send you know, my judicial requirement or my you know, my complaint, my judiciary complaint? You know, I mean, excuse me, it's a machine. So here we have the first problem. I think that also that leads to responsibility. I see now this GTP or whatever, you know, that even in my office I have detected people are using, you know, to produce text. And I guess that many of you are using now, no? Is this legal? Are the contents, you know, is someone backing this? Is someone responding legally to all this? Or is the machine? You know, do I feel secure about this? Legally, no. Legally, I don't feel secure. Be careful with that. You know, I mean, these are interesting. You know, I mean, I like the question. I mean, it's you know, it can be, you know, I mean, how can we address this as a European? Look, I'm not a researcher, okay? I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence. I'm a humble politician, but my duty is to produce the legislation that will cover this, you know, gaps that unfortunately tech companies don't want to cover. And whose responsibility at the end is? That is the question that us legislators will have to address.
Mr. Ripoll, what's your point of view on the topic?
No, I you know, can't agree more with that, so I think I don't have anything to add to that.
Hope we have responded to the question. I see another hand, so if we can please give the microphone. Today we can hear quite well, so.
Perfect. Thank you very much to our distinguished speakers and our moderator, of course. I have a question regarding the position or the attitude of the European Union towards Asia as a continent as a whole. So since the Lisbon Treaty, we see that the European Union is promoting its values, which are enshrined in the EU Treaty, of course, in Article 2, where it says to promote sustainable development, a fair, equal society, fair and equal trade with its external partners and trading partners. Now we also see that the measures that the European Union is taking are kind of aggressive and also extraterritorial. If I can give an example, you have the CBAM, so where we see that the first incomes are expected to be in 2026. And of course, if you want to enter the European single market, your products, at least, and services, they need to be compliant with the CBAM regulation, which will go in force. But next to that, we also see that in regards to technology, the AI Act is having the same effect. So we see that the European Union is having this extraterritorial and regulatory effect. So I just wonder, for both speakers, if they have a view, if the European Union can have a more constructive approach towards our Asian partner countries, instead of having a more, how can I say, more aggressive, if I can be that sharp, approach towards our partner countries in Asia and also other partner countries such as in Latin America and African countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. It's getting us back to setting the standards now in a slightly reverse manner to actually entering the market. So, Mr. Ripoll, what is your view on the question? If you could hear well.
I couldn't hear that. Say it again. Say it directly to me because the acoustic is terrible.
Good. So it's not only me.
Go ahead, Tono.
Go ahead, please.
No. I was complaining because I was listening very poorly, you know.
You couldn't hear.
So, you know, I mean, okay, but only to say that, you know, if I understood very well, you know, we don't have anything personal against Asia. My Asian friends, sorry to say, you know, I mean, our legislation, you know, it's not only for Asian countries. You know, I don't know I couldn't hear the example you were citing, by the way, so sorry for that. But our legislation, you know, it's for all our enterprises and those who want to make business with us. Take it or leave it, you know, I mean, and it's the same respect we have for you that we have for the Latin Americans or the Americans or North Americans. Time will tell if we are right or wrong. I mean, I'm telling you, you know, I mean, we want to maintain, you know, a certain line of privacy and security, you know, in all this new exciting world that the lack of, sorry to say, use the word control might be, you know, misconcepting for some of you. You know, it's the lack of, you know, of ruling of this. This is, you know, I mean, this cannot be, you know, like free for everybody. You know, I mean, how you say, free bar, free drinks for everybody, happy hour. Excuse me. I mean, we have to do some kind of, let's say, order or put some order in this to. At the end, people, you know, have a secure approach to this exciting, fantastic reality of the artificial intelligence or the new technologies. Again, I don't want to stop this. I think this is going to go over. And maybe the Europeans, we will not take the lead. Okay, I mean, but I think that we are setting the standards. You know, that others maybe will follow or not. I don't think we are obliging to anyone here. If you don't want to follow, don't follow it and create your own thing, you know. Let's see what happens and later on, you know, with maybe people complaining about the use that is being done by governments and so on. About the relation with ACI, I know a little bit, if I can, for 1 second, 2 seconds, the question of, you know, I am a Secretary General of an international, ideological international, center-right, called CDI. And, you know, we have opened a lot of relations now with countries in Asia, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in many, many countries. And, you know, where it's not easy because you have, of course, clearly different cultures, different approaches, other kind of principles, and we have all to adapt each other with respect. Asia is fundamental for the European Union. It has been a priority for the United States, but also the European Union since the time of former colonies of some of the countries in the European Union. We have not had set, you know, the respect and priority relation that we need with Asia as the Europeans. And I hope now we are, as you can understand, a little bit distracted by the war in Ukraine, by, you know, the activities of Russia and China in the Sahel. And, you know, but I think that we have to, and there has been, I think, comprehensive, you know, statements and initiatives by the European Commission that, of course, my friend Antoine knows much better, you know, to really re-engage this relation between Asia and the European Union.
Thank you very much for that point of view. And Mr. Ripoll, what is your view on EU setting very high standards to enter the market for other countries?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I remember when I began working for the EU in the late 80s. That was the beginning of that's what we created the internal market. And many people rejoiced that there would be an internal market, because if you are, a tire producer, for example, in the old times you were a French or a German tire producer, and you could only sell in your own country because this country had certain rules. So actually, when we created the internal market, it was a great thing, but I mean, the result was great, because it meant that if you produce something, you could export it everywhere. But that means that we need to have these standards, and you can't have an internal market if you don't have the standards. So I think sometimes people like the idea of the internal market, but they don't see that to get there, you need to have rules and you need to make sure that we have one standard. And actually, many people say the EU is making sure. Actually, we are reducing standards. In the old times, I mean, when we create standards today, instead of having 27 standards, we create one. So actually, instead of thinking that the EU increases standards, we actually reduce standards. Instead of having 27 for 27 countries, we have one standard for all the countries. So I think this is, one always likes the benefit, but one has a hard time to understand what it takes to get to the current result. The problem is when we impose regulations or standards, and that this has an effect. So we decided, it's our responsibility to decide for our market. The problem is when it has an effect on third markets, and it happens on a number of issues like climate change or digital. That I understand why certain countries do not like it so much, that our standards become the best standards, so the common adopted in the world, and these countries, if they want to be part of that upmarket, they need to respect those rules, and they are not the ones who created those rules. So that may be the problem when we have these rules that become the global rules, and it applies to countries that have not decided on them.
Gentlemen, you actually both addressed very important points by EU actually setting very high standards to other countries, but we often forget that we are very much dependent on other countries. And a very good example of that, I think, is a prevailing semiconductor shortage that we are facing since COVID pandemic. Just to give you an example, the semiconductors are obviously needed for creation of chips that you need for all the devices. So if you're holding, for instance, mobile phone, it requires around 160 of these chips. If you're driving a hybrid electric car, you can get up to 3,500. And the supply chain for these types of innovations is obviously dependent not on EU only, but you need to get very much globally. So you actually find out that you have many vendors from very different countries, which also make the supply chain very vulnerable to geopolitical challenges such as COVID, such as war in Ukraine, and so on, and other changes. How do you, gentlemen, view this in terms of risks for the EU, where we are very keen and ambitious on innovation? However, when it comes to our own ability to, for instance, create semiconductors in the region, we are on actually very low level. So what is your view on this point?
If I start, then I will tell you that, yes, I think, Klara, you put it very well. The COVID crisis and the war in Ukraine and many other, occasions have, really made a reflection on the European minds that we have discovered that we had all the outsourcing of our production for many things, not only semiconductors. Remember, the masks during COVID. Suddenly we discovered that we didn't have any masks in Europe, that they were all produced in China. Oops. That also food, is coming also from other countries because we are not reaching very well unfortunately, our agrarian wall here in Europe. I think that this is part of the speech of Ursula von der Leyen in the last Soteo this week in Strasbourg, that also we need to rethink a little bit how we are going to address these topics. And semiconductors is one of them. I mean, the European Union has to wake up. And, and in the meantime, we'll have like oil and gas, for example, and will have to, negotiate with countries in a geopolitical, unstable situation around the world. But we hope that sooner or later this will come back. The production and the innovation has to come back to the European Union or countries very next to the European Union that we need to be stable too.
And Mr. Ripoll, based on your experiences from ASEAN, how's your view on that? Is it a topic that's being discussed? Because obviously some of the countries are related as well. What's your view on this?
Climate issue? No.
The semiconductor shortage, for instance, the way how we develop chips and so on, and the supply chains and dependency on that.
Yeah, I don't believe in the ASEAN countries, and the colleagues from there can. But this is not. I mean, at the moment, the big fight, the big difficulty we have in the region is not so much the semiconductor, at least in the ASEAN, strictly speaking. It's more the climate change issue, the trade agreement. So semiconductors are not, and it's more Taiwan and other related countries. In Southeast Asia, really the big source of contention with us is more on the regulation on deforestation, on CBAM, on due diligence, and palm oil. So these are really the big points of difficulties. Of course, I mean, for us, the reason why the EU is investing also so much and should invest even actually more in the region is the fact that semiconductors and other parts are shipped through in the region. So the security of the seas in the region is fundamental for the West and for Europe in particular. This is why we are investing very much in together with the US in the safety of the seas in the region, and that's why the South China Sea is such a major issue, because we want to make sure we have stability and we don't have disagreements on the borders and who manages what. So we need absolutely access to these semiconductors, and we need to make sure that these tools can be transported in a safe way.
So it's more in a sense of securing the supply chain of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions from the audience. I see a couple in Menti. If we can give a microphone, please.
Hi, my name is Natalie from Sweden. A lot these last couple of days we've been talking about how when it comes to technology and other things that it's quite unequal. We know that a lot of people don't have the same access to technology or internet, and we also know that individuals and countries have different opportunities. When we talk about following, my question goes back to that, and I'm just wondering, what can be done and what will be done to make sure that we can make it more equal, give opportunities to countries and individuals that maybe don't have those, instead of just pointing fingers.
And the question should be addressed again to both panelists. Okay, so Mr. Ripoll, would you like to start on the topic? Okay. So Mr. Istúriz López-White, can you please start?
Yes, there is a gap. It was in the past also with the Industrial Revolution, and now again with the new technologies. We have to work on that. I think that the European Union is the largest donor of funds to developing countries, and I think that part of that should be dedicated, and I know that there are already programs for that, to bring this gap closer, okay, between countries that they don't have the same opportunities as us in this new world, and specifically in the question of connectivity, and the access to these tools. But to tell you that, I think that if we want a stable society, and Natalie, I'm very thankful for the question, because, in order to bring stability also to this changing global panorama, I think that we need these countries also to close this gap as soon as possible, because, if you leave countries out of this, then you have a problem.
If I can maybe slightly develop the question for Mr. Ripoll, because we had an issue understanding as well. You are within, building partnerships for European Parliament in ASEAN, not only with the government representatives, but also with civil society. And we've discussed over the past 3 days that human-centered design is actually core of Society 5.0. So what is your view on larger engagement of civil society within policy-making, decision-making, debates, and so on?
Yeah, one of the big tasks I will have when I'm in Jakarta is to not only to reach out to parliamentarians and to really help build a narrative between, together with our colleagues from delegation and diplomats working on it. I think that what we need to do is, beyond the parliamentarians, we need to reach out to the civil society, and we need to, especially the young generations. I think that very often there's a feeling, if you're in Europe, if you study in Europe, you have the feeling that Southeast Asia or other parts of Europe, it's very far away, they are very different, but actually every time I travel the world, I see so many similarities, and I'm sure that during that week between you after a few days of exchanges between you, you realize that the problems that you are facing, yes, there may be some slight differences of appreciation, but in the end, really, you have the same kind of big questions and difficulties to live. So I think that really we can build this relationship between Southeast Europe and Southeast Asia and Europe if we create this discussion between think tanks, between universities at education level, so that we manage to get a narrative together, and we try to understand how we can better cooperate together. That's really, I think, one of the missions we must build, and this is, I think, where the new technologies come. It used to be a very cumbersome and difficult process or project, or something very difficult to achieve before the new technologies. I think now we are helped with these new technologies, and we can, what I was saying at the beginning, we're not now missing the ways to talk to each other. We need to invest in the brain. We need to invest in the lucidity. In what do we want to achieve together? We have the tools now to do that, but the tools are not enough if there is no substance. So let's try and put a bit of flesh in the discussion. Sometimes we are in the era of Zooms and video conferences. I think sometimes many of these conferences are void of content. So let's maybe use better this technology and make more effort of brain and put more beef in the discussions.
Following up on that point, actually, because this is a very important point, we're actually innovating quite a lot when it comes to technologies. However, our policy and decision-making processes are actually remain embedded in the past quite a lot. One of the group that is, I would say, quite impacted by that is definitely youth, as we are on a youth conference. Within EU, it's 25% of population, which is very much impacted by the decisions that are taken today, and they're very much underrepresented in political processes. And with this technological aspect, you actually brought a very important question that this is how the policy processes can change. But I'm interested in the practice of Mr. LÓPEZ-ISTÚRIZ White. Do you think that the technology can actually help youth people in terms of participation, or including a bit more of participatory mechanisms for youth to actually be able to build a policy? There is also a very interesting initiative of the European Youth Test to actually check whether the legislation have a positive impact on youth when it comes to technology and so on. Do you think that there is a way that the processes can be changed in the future as well?
First, I want to return to the question before of Natalia. I want to take my opportunity to say something, about social conscience. Africa. I'm very worried about the situation in Africa. Unfortunately, not all of Europe is. We are concentrated in Ukraine. Of course, we have to. And, and developing situation also in other countries like Georgia, Moldavia, name it. But Africa, when we have nearly I heard the data the other day. Please don't take it as granted, but there are nearly 60 million people in Africa that they don't have electricity. So, you know, the gap is there. And I think Commission produced Plan Africa at the beginning of this legislature, but this has not been developed. And the European governments have not been serious about it. So I make a call, I profit this audience and these, you know, circumstances, you know, I mean, how do you want to bring the gap in new technologies if you have 60 million living people without electricity, you know, they're close to us, in the Sahel. You don't have to go to Africa, south, you know, the south of Africa, in the Sahel, with all the problems that many of you are aware of. Sorry for that opportunity that I took. Second, the question, Klara, was about the...
was about engagement of youth in terms of policy making for the future and changing the processes given the impact.
Okay, yes. I couldn't be there today. Usually, you know, I am a very serious politician and I try to be physically in places. And I'm terribly sorry about that. It's only that I had an event last minute with the Minister of Foreign Affairs from my country and the High Representative, Josep Borrell, from the European Union, and I couldn't say no. So, you know, unfortunately, no. Why I say this? Because I'm connected with you. Oh, fantastic, new technologies. Here I am, listening to your concerns. But wouldn't it be better that I am there physically, talking to you in coffee time and, you know, and exchanging cards and, you know, as a politician that I have asked for the vote many years, you know, I start to believe that people, you know, miss the opportunity to have face-to-face conversations. You know, these new technologies, these ways of communication are fantastic. It became like fashion during the COVID, and I think that people are now getting a little bit tired of it. I always look into the psychological factor. My father was a psychiatrist, so I look into that very much, you know, and for example, in the European Union in Brussels, you know what is the miracle of these institutions? That you have a Finnish and an Italian sharing an office in Brussels, and it's working, okay? That will not work if both of them are connected, you know, through Zoom or whatever, okay? I think that this is helping, but it shouldn't be all. I think that human contact, avoiding also the consequences, you know, solitude and many other, you know, illnesses that are appearing because of this, especially for you. I'm thinking about you. It's not going to affect me, I'm telling you. Okay, I still read good books, you know, and and I prefer to have a coffee face-to-face with people, okay? But I'm worried about you and the consequences that this could have also. So I believe, like I said from the very beginning, balance. This is very helpful, but it cannot be all.
So leaving us for the food for thought as the time is up, I unfortunately need to end the discussion, but thank you, gentlemen, once again for joining us, for having and being very open-minded with regard to the discussion. I also have to say that the gentleman didn't know what I will ask, so thanks a lot for being very open-minded and bringing both perspectives. Once again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Klara. Merci, Antoine. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being there.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our lovely speakers for joining us today, even online. We really appreciate your support as well, and Klara for some lovely moderation. So that is it for the session today. We are grateful for our online audience for joining us for this session. That'll be the end of today's program. Okay, and I will take a pause while the live stream ends.